Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome. Come on in. Awesome. Okay, we're getting ready for a fun night together. We'll be on the phone for about an hour. Everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining tonight's call. We'll get started in just a couple minutes. Get your water, get your tea. Everyone run to the restroom real fast. We'll be on and getting started in just a minute. All right, I'm really eager. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our live webinar event for all of you folks who have just finished up work. We often host, well, we always host these webinars later in the evening so we can accommodate anyone who's working full time. But this does mean extra special thank you to both of our members tonight for calling in. Both of you guys, I think, are on East Coast time, so it is a little late for you both. Everyone, welcome. My name is Maddie Roach. I'm XYPN's Director of Member Services. That is the first time I've introduced myself with that title instead of Director of Getting Shit Done, which I've been known for years. I am here tonight as the host and to have the honor of interviewing two of our awesome members who have been with us for quite a bit of time now. Both these folks have built and created firms of their dreams. Tonight we're going to hear about the choices that went into their building of the firm, but also we're going to focus on what you guys all called in to learn about, which is this whole thing niching up. And right before we got on the call, we started debating, is it niche or niche? And you're going to hear it two different ways all night long. No judgment. There's no right or wrong answer with that term. So we're going to hear about how both these folks included niches in their development of their firms, how they began to focus on them, what the positives, what the negatives are of it, what they have found to be helpful when exploring niches. Lots of you guys already submitted questions, so thank you. That's what makes these calls great. And I want to direct all of your attention down to the chat box because we do have that enabled and we want you guys to chat. Actually, the Q&A section is where we'll be able to see some questions coming in. So please do use either one of those to ask some questions and I will field them. I can't promise we're going to get to all of them, but we will certainly make the best of this hour together. So thank you again for calling in. Thank you both to Julie and Ryan. Let's get started. This call is really all about the members' perspective of what it's been like to do what they do. And this is your opportunity, callers, to really ask these members questions about their experiences and really anything goes. And then I do want to remind you that if any of you guys do end up joining XYPN in the future, let us know if it was this call or if it was Julie or Ryan that helped you decide to get into the network. That's super important. We want to give them thank yous for that. But without further ado, let's get started. Ryan, would you mind introducing yourself to the callers and a little bit about your firm, where you're located, who you work with, when you started, and then we'll ask Julie the same question.
Sounds good. Thanks, Maddie.
Sure.
My name is Ryan Freilich. I'm in New Orleans, and I work with about half my clients are here and half are scattered various places around the country. And I have sort of an overlapping niche. So I work primarily with couples in their 30s and a lot of educators and education adjacent workers. So the way I look at it is really I work with a lot of people who didn't necessarily get into their career for the financial, benefits. So it might be a couple where both started out as classroom teachers and now one runs a nonprofit and one is a principal, and suddenly their income is, more than double what it was 5 years ago. So kind of the educator and young couple overlap is where I specialize. And I started actually just about 2 years ago. I got my approval, I think it was December 8th, 2016, and was not ready. And so I basically launched January of 2017.
Awesome. Can you believe it's been 2 years?
Not even a little bit.
Awesome.
Been a lot in 2 years. A lot of life.
A lot of life. I love that term. That's a great way to explain it. Julie, how about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm located in New York City, and I launched in 2015, and I work with urban professionals is how I describe it. Mostly that is young professionals and young families in their 30s and 40s.
Love it. Great. And we've dropped Ryan and Julie's information in the chat section. So go ahead and check out their websites, see their firm and everything that they offer. Okay, so Julie, tell us about what your road to financial planning was. Did you wake up as a young girl saying, I must help people budget, or how'd it go?
It did sort of hit me like that one day in college. I just, some of the mentoring work that I was doing, volunteering work I was doing in college, I was seeing a huge need for financial literacy and how money was creating a lot of problems for families, especially in a low income environment. So I decided I wanted to be a financial planner, even though I had no idea what that meant and if that was a thing that people did. My background is accounting, so I went to school, got my accounting degree, and started off in public accounting. But as soon as I could find an entryway into financial planning, that's what I did. So I moved to New York to be an auditor at a Big Four public accounting firm, and then a couple years in, left and joined a boutique financial planning firm.
Awesome. Great. Ryan, how about you?
I have an opposite story, which is I'm a career changer, hadn't worked for an RIA before launching my own, which I don't necessarily recommend, but that's another topic. And so I worked as a teacher for 5 years and then hiring teachers, working in HR and benefits. And so you learn a lot about people's financial lives because you know who's asking for raises and paycheck advances and who's saving and not saving and garnishments and who asks what questions tells you a lot. And through that and working with our own planner and sort of a series of life events, got interested, started taking CFP classes, and just the timing worked out that it made more sense to launch rather and couldn't find a firm locally that was hiring that was fee only. So I launched my own, and that was 2-ish years ago. But a lot of the experience in HR around insurance and retirement plans has really come in handy, particularly with my niche, which now involves working with schools. So I have educators, but also schools and nonprofits that work with schools as 401k, 403b clients. And I learned a ton about the horror show that 403b world is and how it's not that hard to get clients once they actually know what they're paying.
Awesome. Julie, what brought you from the boutique firm to going out on your own?
Let's see, it was a couple of things. Part of it was just life changes, having kids and needing to figure out a way to do what I love and just be present in my personal life the way I wanted to. And also I wanted to serve the people I wanted to serve and do what I wanted to do. And I was having a hard time figuring out how to do that any other way other than starting my own firm. So I loved my time and the experience I got and the clients I worked with in the firms that I was at before I launched my own, but working with people that are my age in a similar season of life was just a more natural fit. Mm-hmm. And it allowed me to not have to sell a product or acquire assets. So yeah.
Awesome. Great. Ryan, I know it's a loaded question, but what was it like to go out on your own and open up your own firm?
Yeah, it's a lot. So, I mean, I had, you know, in some ways starting with a fresh slate is better than unlearning, I think. You know, I talk to a lot of people now and there's some things that people who have worked in the industry for years may have to unlearn or like mindsets to break. And I think in some ways it was an advantage to come in free of those things. But of course, the learning curve being quite steep. So I've relied a ton on a study group and mentors and on narrowing the focus of who I'm working with. And I definitely, like, now I look back and I wish I'd done it sooner, because the 3 clients that fall furthest outside of my niche, I spend way disproportional time on, just because whatever the thing that's going on with them, it's something I haven't thought about at all recently. Like Medicare, for example, is not something I think about for 24 of my 26 clients, because they're 20 years away from it. And then it comes up and it's like, oh, this is something that is really time consuming relative to how complicated it is, just because it's not something that I'm fresh on and have answered a bunch of times. So I think that's one of those things that in going out on my own, I wish I had not just taken anyone with a pulse in the first year, because I'm now, and you know, that goes to having enough runway and personal finances and all that. But I think it is now a thing where I have these people that I have a relationship with and I want to keep working with, but I do end up spending a significantly greater amount of time relative to what they're, paying, because their needs are just so different than most of the other people I work with.
Mm-hmm. Were you familiar with the concept of having a niche when you launched? It sounded like a lot of your experience kind of led you to opening up your firm and kind of focusing on who you were working with. But was this a term that you were using and saying, I needed to define this in the first few months, or was this something that kind of came down the road?
Did I say it? Yes. Did I mean it? No. And so what I mean by that is, like, did I say it? Yeah, when it sounded convenient and helpful, I said it. When I was in an environment where it didn't seem helpful, like a Chamber of Commerce event, which, by the way, don't go to this. I wouldn't say it. So it was very much let me say this when I think it's helpful, which is, you can't do that. It doesn't work. So like in or out, and don't go halfway. And so it was something I espoused, I think, in the first 6 to 9 months without really committing to. And as I've committed to it more, it's been actually freeing, because I don't just look at the world as every person being a potential client, which A, is a weird way to look at the world, and B, just isn't realistic, because you cannot serve everyone and meet their needs and be the best person for them.
I love it. We're already getting into the meat of it. Julie, did you know, it sounded like you were motivated to work with people who were in a similar season, as you said, as you. Did you know that you needed or wanted to niche the moment you launched your firm, or was this something that came down the road?
I feel like it just sort of came naturally. I don't know that it was something that I consciously was focused on. I just had a sense of, I'd been in the world for a while and doing a lot of pro bono work, and, was the go-to, just used to friends seeking me out for financial counsel. And so I had a good sense of what the need was and where I felt like I could help people and fill a void where I felt like there was really no option for a lot of these families that need help. So I'd say it just sort of happened naturally, but then XYPN helped me feel more confident and say, yeah, no, just put it in writing and make it really clear what you're about. Yeah.
Cool. Did you test any niches? This was a question a caller wrote in about, did you test any before you kind of invested the time and money into a new website and a new brand?
No, I didn't do any testing. I would say it's more experience. I would, there are people groups that I have a soft spot for. And so, an elderly widow, I want to help her, and just realizing, doing what I could, but then realizing, there are other people in the city that are better equipped. So there's a understanding what I'm great at and what value I can add, and understanding how to really explain that, and also explain to the individual where they're going to need to hire somebody else. And so I can do this for you, but here's another need that I'm not a great fit for, and let me help you connect to someone like that. So I would say more, taking on a client that I wanted to help and there was something I could do for them, but then realizing, it would be better for them to just start a relationship with a different advisor who has deeper and broader expertise in some of their seasons of life.
What an honest and great answer. Ryan, go ahead.
Sorry. What Julie just said, I think, was really important to keep in mind. So literally 2 weeks ago, the first time I had a prospect reach out and referred them out to someone else, which is just something I wish I had started doing sooner, but it was just purely wanting to get clients. But it was exactly what you're saying. I looked at they filled out my online questionnaire when they booked a call, and it was just very clear, this is not a person that I am the best fit for. It's better for them and for me if I don't do this just because it's another client and would be a fairly big client for me, right? So they were in their 70s on Social Security and had a couple of annuities and pensions, a lot of fixed income stuff, very much in the latter phase of their life, and like it's just totally different than what I do. And so I connected them to someone else in the city who primarily works with people who are at or have passed retirement age, like perfect client for them. And that person has referred clients to me too. So I think helping them get the right person, there's like a karmic victory for that. And you don't look up 3 years in and go, crap, I'm trying to talk about, Medicaid planning one day and student loans the next day and getting married and merging finances the day after that, because it kind of breaks your brain when you're trying to stretch that wide.
Oh, callers, that both what Julie and Ryan just hit on answers a lot of the concerned questions that came in about, well, won't this prohibit me from serving everyone else and people generally? There were several questions about, if I niche up, will I be limited in who I work with? But the way Julie and Ryan just explained it, it's going to be what keeps you sane, in fact. Julie, do you have anything on that point?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good to be limited. I think you can't be all things to all people. And I don't know, the benefits of being really specific about what you do and who you serve just allows you to get better, faster at what you do. I feel like I'm much more time efficient. My process is more efficient and standardized. And you have more time and like headspace to go deep into becoming an expert in the areas that matter most to the people you work with. And I feel like I'm a better advisor for those people because of that. And I also have more just bandwidth in life, just taking on engagements that I know are a good fit for me. Everybody wins. So I'd say it's good to limit your options.
Ryan, any words on that?
Same thing. And I think we often talk about niche from a marketing and external perspective. And yes, it's helpful there. I find it more helpful from the internal operations end. So like my vision for my firm is like, it's me and a computer. I'm not hiring. I'm not planning to like scale up large. And so efficiency is really important. And if you're, what tools do you buy? Like this happened this past week. Like I realized something about Social Security that was going to be beneficial for one of my 2 clients that are in their late 60s. And I had to literally email birth dates and PIA amounts to another planner who has the right software, because I just don't have it. And so there are so many moments like that where I just keep coming back to these 2 clients. I have 2 clients that I took that are actually parents of other clients that are in their 60s. And I spend so much time going outside my normal set of meetings and procedures for them, either because they're struggling with the tech or there's a financial planning topic that I'm not as up to date on as I am on some of the other things. And so it's a lot harder to have an efficient, consistent process that like doesn't leave gaps in what your advice is when you're trying to solve such different problems for different people. And even though, yes, there are, with couples in their 30s who work in education, there's still a wide array of incomes, and some have student loans and some don't, and some had inheritances and some don't, but they're still generally at a stage of life of, needing, how do we merge finances? How do we balance now with later? How do we pay for kids' education and balance that with retirement, paying off student loans for half of them? Like there's still generally the same topics coming up over and over and over again, and I can cover those consistently in my process.
Great. And I want to ask you both about your processes in just a minute, but to kind of wrap up some of the general questions that came in about niching up, people were saying they have paralysis by analysis in terms of trying to figure out what their niche is. Any pro tips on how you stumbled upon yours? You shared your stories, but any tips for someone who is really racking their mind for who they could focus on? Julie?
Yeah, I feel like just starting with what you already know and what you like, what it is that you want to share with people and what that add is for you, that they, and then thinking about who that applies to. I feel like for me, it was just a natural extension of what I already knew about like life in the city and juggling kids and navigating all the things, and who was just naturally hitting me up for advice. So it was a world I already knew and understood. I feel like if I was trying to niche into like an industry that wasn't my own, like doctors, for example, at least having close proximity with doctors and already having like good friends. And so I'm kind of understanding what their world looks like, what their questions are, what their struggles are. Yeah, so I would probably start by looking at what you're in close proximity to.
Yeah, great tip. Ryan, how about you?
I'd second everything Julie said. The only thing I think I would add to it is, who do you enjoy talking to?
Yeah.
Like who are the types of people that you want to spend time talking to? And so like for me, I'm going to paint with a really broad brush here. I don't tend to get along with like engineers are not generally my type of person to work with as clients. I have two, and I joke with them often, but like, it's not like, that's not the type of planning that I necessarily do, but I don't spend a lot of time around engineers either. And so I would be miserable if I was like, oh, well, I got this one engineer and they work for a major oil company, so I should just get all of the people that he works with. Because on paper, they sound great. They're like, this guy's 23 and makes $130,000 a year. Like, in theory, that's a great future client, but I actually don't want 30 of him. So just like I would start with who you know, as Julie said, and who you enjoy spending time on. Cause like you have the ability to create your own work life and who you get to spend time talking to. So don't niche into something that you don't enjoy the personality type. And you might hate, educators and bleeding hearts who I work with and want to work with engineers, and that's just fine too, but know thyself.
Yep, I love it. This was an interesting question. It seems to me that people tell me they have a niche, but they're describing a demographic swath of millions. How small or large should a niche be, Ryan?
Anything to narrow it is good, but yeah, I think to me, it's a way of you're talking to someone rather than talking to the world. So when I, write something online, it's a lot clearer who I'm talking to, or like I've had people reach out from, teacherpensions.org, ask me to write a guest blog post. Like it's a lot easier to, yes, that limits it to what, however, 10, 20 million teachers, however many millions of teachers there are, like that's not limited. So I wouldn't worry about going too small. If anything, I think most of us are too broad, myself included. And the more focused you get, the more efficient you're going to be. So I would certainly not worry about being, I don't know that I've seen anyone that has to worry about being too small, personally.
Mm-hmm. Julie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, I feel like it's important not to let like perfect become the enemy of good, right? Is the way the phrase goes. I feel like I'm constantly improving and iterating on my service model and like the language on my website. And so as I've gone along, I've been able to add things here or there to get more specific. But so yeah, my niche, like urban professionals, there's like 8 million of us, right? There's like so many where I live. So it is really broad, but I feel like the way my voice on my website, photos, the way it's laid out, like that's just naturally going to be more attractive to some people rather than others. And the information that I request in order to like book an intro call kind of helps me vet. And I'm much better now at recognizing from just a short few details, they're not going to be a great fit for me. So before, like, I'm just going to point them in another direction because I know a lot of other advisors in the city. And I think they're probably going to be a better fit elsewhere. So I feel like I don't know if I feel like I'm maybe a little bit more specific in who I work with, like internally, right? Because like some of these things are intangible, it's like hard to describe, right? There are certain professions, like Ryan mentioned, that I have just consistently found like I'm not the right person, so but I have not found, that being said, I have not found that by having what might appear to be a broad niche on my website to be a bad thing. I'm not overwhelmed with low quality prospects reaching out. So that's working for me. And I feel like your website and your process is going to be, it's just going to evolve starting from day one. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, great advice to both of you. Julie, talk to us about how kind of those first 6 months went in terms of setting up your firm and getting kind of plugged into your niche. How did you research them? How did you begin branding yourself? What went into the thought process of kind of those first 6 months, first few clients?
Yeah, I did not, I feel like the research, it's just like, this is my world and these are people that I know, right? They're like, a lot of times they're my neighbors, right? They live a few blocks away, even though we don't know each other personally. And so I feel like I was already very familiar with the world. And it was a lot of times just like putting myself in the seat of the client receiving the services, like what language and what kind of voice on my website and what kind of answers would I want from an advisor. So I feel like I spent a lot of time just like writing out like the value of my service or what it was I wanted to do, and just sort of eventually, landed on the language that I use on my website. But in terms of the process, I feel like it's helpful to have maybe a couple of friends or that you could walk through and just be like a model, like test run client, and just what are their questions and how are you going to answer them? Like, what is the deliverable? And then like client by client, I realized, you know what, I can organize that better. Now I have a template document, like it's the same structure for every client. It's highly customized, but like the bones are still the same. So I feel like those first 6 months, there wasn't much that was standardized. It kind of had to, I don't know, I was just creating my plan from scratch, which I think is like pretty common for a lot of, especially early XYPNers, when there weren't a ton of other advisors to, look at their ADVs and their websites and their services, that sort of thing. So I don't know, I just built it from scratch in a way that I felt like would be the way I would want an advisor to communicate with me. Or I just asked the client, like, what would be a really, I don't know, helpful way to visualize like this area of your financial life. Does that make sense? Like I had one client say, it'd be really helpful if I could see like a timeline of when I'm going to start to pay off all these debts. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to add a timeline to my plan.
Yeah, beautiful. What a great accomplishment to be able to say you built your firm from scratch just the way you wanted. That's wonderful. Ryan, talk to us about your first 6 months going after your first clients and whether they were in your niche and how you went about it, how you branded.
Yeah, so I started off really doing the 1,000 cups of coffee sort of idea. Anyone, friend, acquaintance, whatever it is that I could talk to and say, this is what I'm doing. Do you think this would benefit you? Yes, no. If no, why not? If yes, what are the services you would like? Ballpark figure on, what do you think is appropriate for pricing? I did that a ton. And what's weird is now 2 years later, some of those are coming back. So I literally had a prospect meeting last week with a woman I used to work with who I had a coffee with, 3 weeks after I launched, that was like, this is what I'm thinking about. And was not trying to pitch her, was not trying to like get her to become a client, was really just trying to like listen. And, she and her now husband and their new baby were in my office a week ago, and they are like on paper exactly who I work with. Like she works for a nonprofit. They have a 4-month-old. They got married a year and a half ago. So I think it pays off like just by putting a million connections out in the world and by hearing what are the things that matter to them, what are the things that they might be looking for. Because in my experiences, most young people hear financial planner and either think, you're trying to sell me something from Northwestern Mutual or somewhere like that, or they have no idea what it means, right? So it's either a negative reaction or a nothing reaction. Almost no one has an immediate positive reaction. And so I think really just dropping any pretense of I'm trying to get you on board right now and just really be listening all the time was really helpful. And I talked to so many people back then that honestly I'd forgotten I talked about, and now I've gotten emails from or referrals from. I've been tagged on Facebook where someone's like, hey, does anyone know a financial planner? And someone has been like, oh, actually this guy I used to work with, he and I had coffee and talked about it once, and I've gotten a client that way. So I think just the more people you can go talk to in a really, really hands-off way, making it really clear that you're not attempting to turn this into a sales pitch, the less hard you try at it, the better off it actually works in the end in terms of outcomes. And then in terms of the niche itself, just continuing to talk about things people care about. So like 403Bs, RMS, they're often laden with terrible products and restrictive and expensive. And I was able to talk about that because I work on the plan sponsor side as an HR director, and I learned a lot about it there. So I was able to go to schools and say, like, this is what we did at my old school. This is the liability that you have. This is how I can help you fix it. So it's a little weird because you're going, hey, you have a problem. Hey, and I can help you fix that problem that you didn't know you had 30 seconds ago. But because I am doing it in an industry that I have worked in a community that I already have a lot of connection in, like there's trust built, there's expertise built, that makes it a lot easier for me to make that pitch versus like if I were to try to work on retirement plans for, whatever small business law firms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I have nothing there to offer other than just being like a guy off the street emailing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You hit on a lot. And I love that you become really memorable, with the thousand cups of coffee approach. When you start saying your niche and who you work with, you're no longer just an advisor. And then you become kind of someone that someone remembers when whether or not they're the perfect client for you. If they're talking about you or they meet someone who fits your niche, they may say, oh, I know someone that works with people like you. And you're really able to differentiate yourself. Julie, if you don't mind sharing, kind of what was your client acquisition like over the past couple of years? We've kind of heard through the grapevines that ramping up with the niche takes a little bit more time than without one, but then once you kind of hit your trajectory, it really goes up from there. And it wasn't through the grapevines; we actually heard it through the benchmarking survey that folks that niche up early have a slower start rate, but then really start exceeding the folks that don't. Was that your experience, or how did that happen?
I feel like this is where it's a little unique being in New York because it's such a densely populated area. So there just are a lot more people that need my services. So I have not had a hard time finding clients. I don't do much, what is it called? Outbound marketing. I have a website with a blog and I send a newsletter, and that's like kind of it. So and also 2015, 2016 is a little bit fuzzy in my brain at the moment, but I think largely people just found me through XYPN and and just through my personal network. I've been here a really long time, so I know a lot of people. And so I think, I let all my personal network know what I was doing. And I think that helped just, bring in some prospects that way. So I never felt deterred or discouraged by having a niche. And I also, so when I started, I was working more part-time because I had small kids at home. And so if I had been full-time, I may have felt like, oh, wow, I have more capacity. It would be great if I could take on 2 more clients this month. But because I was working part-time, that maybe masked a little bit the fact, So I, at multiple times, and this was a little bit of a product of me just needing to get myself organized and like systematize and just be better organized. I had moments where I had to stop taking on new clients, or there would, I wouldn't be able to talk to a prospect for a month or so, or someone would want to sign on and we wouldn't be able to get started with the engagement right away. So I think that experience is maybe a little bit unique because I started off part-time and I'm in a densely populated city. Yeah. And at the time there were not very many people like me doing what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Ryan, how about you? What was your kind of client acquisition story like?
I have never had the problem of having to put people on hold. I'm just giving you a hard time. Sorry, Julie. No, so I think my story, everyone's story is unique, right? And so I do think it's hard to disaggregate what causes what, because it's kind of a small sample size. So like we had a baby 3 months after the launch of my firm. And so I spent a lot of time with him. And then my wife went back to work before we had full-time childcare. So I was with him for the vast majority of the day for a period of time. And I was still working on my CFP. So there was a lot going on in year one. Overall, like numbers wise, I ended year one with 11 ongoing clients. I'm now at the end of year two and it's 26, I think, as of today.
Nice.
Clients. It has definitely sped up as time has gone on, whether that's just from more, touch points out in the world, from getting my CFP a couple months ago and being listed on XY's platform, which has helped. Actually, I have 2 clients since August that have signed on from finding me at XY. So thank you. Or I do think as I've gained more confidence in like actually owning this is who I work with. Like I work with couples in their 30s who work in education or education adjacent jobs.
Yeah.
And I just say that. And like that's still pretty broad. But it covers a whole lot of people I know, and like, friends of former roommates and things like that have found their way to me because it's just such a, people's ears perk up when they hear something that describes themselves as opposed to just being a generalist. So it's definitely the more comfortable I have gotten in putting that message out in the world, the more, the more people have been coming in. And I would say also like the percentage of people that fit that profile have also been, steadily going up to, so I'm spending less time screening people out or, having a call with someone and being like, this is not a good idea. Why am I, why did I just spend 45 minutes talking to this person? That the percentage of time I'm doing that is definitely going down the clearer I'm getting in messaging.
Great. Awesome. Okay, Julie, you mind talking to us a little bit about kind of your service model for urban dwellers, folks who you focus on? How do you differentiate yourself kind of from the average advisor? What unique parts of your service do you provide to your clients?
I would say one thing that is unique is that I do a lot of project planning, where, it'll be like a 3 or 6 month engagement, like a one-time thing. I really love that. I recognize that's, not the most profitable way to position your firm. But for me, I don't know. I love working with as many people and helping as many families as I can. So I do a lot of project work. And part of that also is I want to make sure if someone is an ongoing client that they're a really good fit. And so I feel like it's a good test run phase to have like an initial engagement period, and just make sure that this is working well on both ends. And I'd say I'm very focused on cash flow and value. So I like to take a really good look at what's coming in and where it's all going, what's happening with their money, and then getting really clear on goals and values and what's most important in their world, and kind of understanding like what's going on below the surface that's like driving their money decisions and their anxieties around money. And then looking at those two things side by side and figuring out, is the way that they're behaving with their money accurately reflecting what they're telling me is most important. So, I'd say,
Great.
Yeah.
It may be a coincidence, but several advisors who are in the New York City area come to mind also focus on project work. And it may just be some of the folks in that stage or the people that are in that city or in urban areas just tend to, the 3 to 6 months is exactly what someone who just had babies and needs to get a quick plan needs.
Yeah. No, I love catching people when they're young and they're in those transitions. And if we can, work out the kinks and get things in a good place and answer questions, make people feel like they're on the same page as their spouse, have a solid foundation. And I like setting people off on their way and feel like they're on a good, they're on a good path. And then a lot of it, they come back to me when they're ready to re-engage or add ongoing. But for me, that's really fun. It's also been extremely helpful to work with, hundreds of people in a really short period of time. I feel like I've gotten to see a lot more. And so I feel like I've developed expertise a lot faster than I would have if I had just been, working with the same, 20 or 30 families for several years. So it's so fun to see people progress over several years and go through, cycle through several seasons of life. It's like, I love that. And so that's something you can really only get from ongoing clients. It is really fun when those relationships as they grow and develop, but yeah, the project work is, I enjoy that. Cause like, a lot of people, I do end up, I work with a lot of people with credit card debt or who are in some sort of like cash crunch situation. So I describe it as a lot of times I feel like I'm coming in and kind of like triaging the situation and just helping them get their head above water. And then I'm happy for them to just, they've got, they've taken care of the basics, and then when they have capacity and when they have a need, they'll come back to me. So, yeah.
Sounds like the model works really well for the people that you work with.
Yeah.
Ryan, it sounds like you have a fair amount of your own expertise with the folks that you work with. How does your service for those clients differ from the average advisor?
Yeah. I would say I'm doing a little bit the opposite. I'm trying to message more and more upfront to people. Like, this is a decades long relationship, which is a little daunting when you're like 30. But I think I did a poor job of messaging that in year one. And I think, given who I work with, things change so fast. So I'm thinking of a couple I started working with literally in May. And since last May, they have gotten engaged. They've bought a house. She lost her job. And now she has a new job. So that's in 6 months, 7 months. So there's a lot of financial pieces happening in there. So I do sort of a 3-meeting upfront process, and I spend almost the entire first meeting on like goals and values, in particular, like money relationship, both each as an individual and as a couple. A lot of the people I work with either have not yet merged finances or have barely. They're like Venmoing back and forth once a month, and they have a spreadsheet. Or they've like kind of accidentally merged without ever actually thinking about it or talking about it. So actually kind of pushing to like, why is it set up that way? Is there anything that's uncomfortable about that? Is there anything that you'd like to change? If you had, I've asked the question to people like, pretend there was no system. Like, how would you draw up your shared system together? And I ask each of them to like do it on a little piece of paper, and then we share, and like they sometimes end up very different. So I spend a lot of time with couples making sure that both are feeling on board and heard and a part of the process. And I think particularly like there is a lot more gender equity amongst the finances of people in their 30s than people in their 60s. Like my couples in their 60s, I like really tried to keep the female involved, and it was just like not happening despite my efforts. Hasn't been nearly as hard with the younger couples, which back to the niche thing. But so spending a lot of time on that in meeting one, the second meeting really getting organized, looking at cash flow, making sure that I understand all of the documents that have come in and clarifying any questions. And then the third meeting going through a plan delivery. What I always say in the plan delivery is like, this is a draft plan delivery, because if I say you should do X and you're feeling like Y is more important, we're going to talk about it. But ultimately, like, it is your money and it is your life. And I'm going to give you my opinion and the pros and cons. But if you tell me, you want to do this thing first, then that's what we're going to do. So rarely I will put my foot down like, oh, you have a baby on the way, life insurance is coming first. Sorry. No, like, we're not doing something else first, but that's pretty good. So, and then the other piece is I have now, this is the 6th person I think I have that is pregnant or has had a baby since we've in my client relationships. So I've basically have a full meeting that is like, this is what happens when you go from 2 to 3. Life insurance, estate plans. I have a spreadsheet that's like budgeting for daycare, budgeting for adding to health insurance. Cause a lot of people are like, oh, just put them on my health insurance. I'm like, we need to look and see whose is better, whose employer covers more. Does it make sense to put all 3 of you on one plan now to get one deductible? So there's like the litany of topics that happens there. And like, I've been through it now 6 times in 2 years. And so I think, that's an example of a time that like having a process that is repeatable because you see the same things over and over is helpful. And then I do a fair amount of student loan work, and so I'm working on the certified student loan planner designation. And so I do, one project every month or 2 that's just student loan focused. So that's a little bit to the side of the main kind of core repeatable stuff that I do.
Great. Wonderful. I love that. It's almost like your continuing education is built into you servicing your clients. There were a lot of questions that were submitted about how do you stay up to date? How do you know what they need? And you've answered a lot of that. But Julie, what kind of continuing education do you do to really understand the needs of your clients? And do you go to outside help for that to learn more about your folks?
Yeah, this year I went through the college pre-approval course, and it was awesome. I highly recommend it. It was so great. And student loans, I do a lot of tax continuing ed, and yeah, I'd say those are the big ones: student loans, college savings, tax.
Great. Ryan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I try to spend a fair amount of time like taking CE seriously. I'm definitely a person that could like try to just do it in the least invasive way possible. So try to actually, you know, make that process into something that's helpful and really seeking out things that are related to the topics that I spend the most time on. So like health insurance and understanding changes in healthcare is one. I'm doing the student loan planner designation right now, which is definitely helpful because just when you think you understand student loans, you realize like how little you actually understand about student loans. I feel like is a continually recurring theme for me and for many. And so, yeah, I mean, I think part of it also is even when you have a niche, unless you're really working with like all employees of Google or all employees of Shell, every benefits package is so different. So you're constantly relearning anyways. So while some of the topics stay the same, you know, there is a lot of like case studies, so to speak, of like, oh, this, I haven't seen this benefits package before, or this state retirement plan before, or what are the options in the state pension in Louisiana if you're not trying to work in the state for 25 years. So a lot of it's, you know, stuff that has come up via a client, and then I've gone down the rabbit hole and learned not just the answer for their situation, but sort of like the whole host of, you know, all the roads I went down and realized, nope, that's not it. Well, now I have that for the next time I see it.
Got it. Ryan, how important do you think the CFP was for you? I know that you were working hard for it and it was a big celebration when you got it. Did you recommend advisors get their CFP?
I 100% do. I think there are some people, you know, so first of all, I think just for credibility, like it is known, like I had people ask me, are you a CFP? And I was like, no, working on it. And like, it's nice to say, yep, I am. The visibility online, it helps a lot. Like XY's website, NAPFA, just general SEO, because you get links from those places. It's helpful. And you know, it's not the be all end all, right? Like there's a whole bunch of stuff I learned in the CFP. Like I like to tell people like the estate planning course, it's like chapter 1, estate planning for normal people, chapter 2 through 11, how to avoid taxes for everybody else. And like, do I know the difference between a grat and a grut and a crut? Like, no, I don't. I haven't looked at any of that since the test, and I don't intend to, because no one I work with is remotely close to needing it. And so, yeah, you know, the CFP does cover quite a bit of breadth that you have to just like understand that some of it will be useful and some of it won't be useful. But I think for the industry to sort of have a designation that we say like, this is the bar that we want people to work towards. And I realized the irony of like a person who came in with no experience saying that we need to hold a high bar. I do get that, but it's been super helpful for me. And it's also just helped my confidence wise to say like, oh, I passed this hard test and like took all the coursework and did all the things necessary to do this. Like I know more than I think I do. Yeah,
great. Julie, how about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's important and you should do it. Depending on the demographic you're serving, a lot of the content might not be relevant, and there might be a lot of content that's not even touched in the course, but you just got to deal with that. And you know, the best learning like comes on the job, like with clients, like Ryan was saying. But yeah, I highly recommend it. Yeah, I think it's worth it. It's a slog, but definitely worth it.
Great. On that note, someone on the call did ask, are there any review courses for the CFP that you guys recommend for someone maybe who's been out of school for a while?
I think it was called Cure, the self-study. That was it was a while ago. Yeah, I I don't have a ton of advice on that front.
Yeah, I did Dalton. It was fine. It was also self-study. So, I think I don't know much about the different programs. I do think like know thyself and whether you can do self-study or not do self-study. For some people, like you might just need a classroom environment, and that's fine. There wasn't one within 70 miles of me, and so it wasn't an option.
Yeah. Okay. Both of you mentioned getting clients off of our Find an Advisor profile page or consumer site on XYPN. Now, we don't guarantee folks will get clients, but more and more members are telling us that they are, in fact, getting at least prospects from the page. Where else are your clients coming from? Julie?
Google is what a lot of people say. I think it's one of those things where XY is helping and NAPA is helping and the CFP is helping, and all together people find me on Google because of those things. And cause I feel like people, they do a lot of research, and so they probably, a lot of times they just forget, and they probably check out all of those places and see you in all those places. And yeah, so Google, and then just my personal network. I think when you are really, you love what you do and people know what you do. Yeah, I found people to just find me naturally through my personal network. Yeah.
That internal referral. It's amazing. How about you, Ryan?
Very similar. The first year, it's starting to trend a little bit differently now, but in the first year and a half, probably because I didn't have the CFP, like it was a lot of personal network and 1 degree away from personal network. So at one point, this is no longer true, but at one point, 70% of my clients, because I looked this up, were either someone I knew or 1 degree of separation from someone I knew before I launched the firm, right? So like a friend of mine from childhood has a friend now who he and his wife are now clients, like stuff like that. An old roommate I lived with a decade ago, he and his wife are clients. And that has started changing more with more of an online presence with NAFA, CFP board, fee only network, et cetera. But definitely I think personal network goes a long, long way. And I think, going back to like, who do you want to spend time talking to? Like, I personally have chosen to work with family and friends. Some people just have a hard rule against that. I am okay with it. And so some people have asked, reached out and asked me, and I was like, yes. And then, kind of have some ground rules that I go through in terms of like, how do we separate and make this work? But, I specialize in working with people who are very much like my wife and I and our stage of life. And so they know that we're going through similar things. They know that I started a business and had a baby in a 3-month stretch. And so when we're talking about the adjustments to their budget, like I just went through that.
Just in it. Yeah, absolutely. Julie, as you look at 2019, what's on the docket for your firm? What are the big changes? What are your goals?
That's a good question. That is on my to-do list to really like nail those things down in the coming weeks.
Schedule a meeting. I have to do that too.
Yeah. I am planning to, probably the biggest change is I'm going to add investment management. That's not been something that I've done to date. I said I wasn't going to do it until both of my kids were in school full time, and that happened this fall. So it's time to do that. So yeah, it also wasn't something that enough of my clients really needed. So that'll be a big change in 2019. Yeah, I have an online course that I built this last year. And so figuring out how to best utilize that to, reach more people. Especially people with like credit card debt or who are in those like cash crunch situations. Just figuring out how to use that better so that I can help more people, or at least, offer something to people who can't, where like a one-on-one engagement just does not make the most sense for them right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, before I ask you that same question, do you do investment management?
I use Betterment for advisors, and I don't charge for it. So my thought is like Betterment implements what I think is appropriate, and it makes it super easy for me. So I don't charge an extra fee on top of what Betterment charges. And then some clients use it and some don't. My three biggest clients are Vanguard do-it-yourselfers, and I have said, it's fine to keep it there, and I give some advice around, where we're going to rebalance, and we check on it once a year to make sure that things haven't gotten way out of whack, and making sure that they're using, an appropriate set of funds given their tolerance and all that good stuff. Apparently, my brain just shut down there for a second, but I'm not doing the management myself.
Yeah, got it.
I did use First Ascent for a while, and I liked it. It just didn't make sense given who I work with. To put a big focus on that, for 95% of the things that happen in my firm, Betterment does the job.
Awesome. So looking at 2019, any changes to your firm? Any big rocks you're going to be working on?
So for me, a big one is like just standardizing of everything, right? So of process, of procedures, of pricing. I think, as I've gotten more confident and as I've seen the value over time with clients, I have raised prices, but now there's kind of all over the board what people are being charged. And so I want to get that to a more standard place, and just systemizing in general. Like I'm at the point now where I am not worried on a day-to-day basis of like getting the next client, because I think they'll come. And I'm no longer going like, oh crap, I haven't heard from anyone in 3 weeks. Will no one ever work with me ever again is what I'm thinking now, which is definitely like a thought that happens in the first year or two. And like, it's not a rational thought, but we all think it, right? Like when I was at 11 clients, I thought I would forever have 11. When I was at 15, I would go past 15 and now it's 26. And I'm convinced that 26 is the number that I have to make work for the rest of my life. And like, it's ridiculous. But now that that's like sort of not as foremost, I'm taking the time to standardize so I can get to the 50 to 60 clients I want to work with and do it in a sustainable way. And I think I can do 50 or 60 with just me, but not if I keep doing things differently for different clients.
Got it. Awesome. Okay, folks, if you can believe it, we're wrapping up the hour. I have one really good question for both Julie and Ryan, but before I do that, I want to say thank you so much to all of our callers and of course our hosts, and remind you that if either Ryan or Julie were the inspiration to joining XY and following in their footsteps, let us know. But also a reminder that I'm here every month. Next month, we're going to be talking about shutting down the rumors, the misconceptions of XYPN. I recently wrote a blog about the topic. We've got two awesome members, Ben Martinick and Michelle Underwood-Gass, joining us on January 2nd. And so a few days after 2019 begins, join me back here to talk about the misconceptions of XY. Now, back to the fun stuff. Ryan, I'll let you start and Julie wrap it up for us. Ryan, what mistake, if any, would you have tried to avoid over the past 2 years?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm just an aside, a million people helped me along the way, like XY members. So like, if you're on this call and you like just want to talk more, good, bad, ugly, like there's a link on my website for like financial colleagues to book a phone call. Like it's open, go there. A lot of people took the time to do that for me, and I'm trying wherever I can to pay that forward. I hope I don't get 42 calls, but so please, really, like a lot of people helped me when I was sitting in your shoes, and so know that like people want to help you do this, because it's really great when you can get it going for yourself. My answer would be like I know this sounds like Michael like programmed my response or something, but I really do think like confidently believing in having a niche sooner. I like said it without believing it, and I think understanding that like it's ridiculous to think you're limiting yourself when you're limiting yourself to millions of people.
Yeah.
And so I think getting over that mental hurdle of saying, not I'm a financial planner, because that just lands like a dud, but saying like, oh, I help like young couples figure out their money and how to work together with their money and how to make their money make sense for them. Oh, and that like leads to an organic, natural conversation. And it took me a year plus to like answer the question that way, as opposed to like, I run a financial planning business and then seeing people turn and walk away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good advice, Ryan. Julie, anything you would have changed about your experience, and then any final words of wisdom for our callers?
I'd say I charged too little initially. Like, I think I just was undervaluing what I was doing, what I was offering, as does everyone. In hindsight, I should have started my firm earlier. And I should have said no more often. I really love the book. I think I got this from the book Essentialism. It's so good, but the premise is you need to say no a lot so that you can say yes to the right things. And so in client terms, like I should have felt more at peace saying no when I was not the best fit, or when, just so that I could say yes to the people that come in the door that are a really great fit, that I really can provide the most value, I think. So saying no more often.
I love it. And I wrote that book
and standardizing, just like Ryan was saying, standardizing from the beginning, like just have a process, document.
Yep. Wow. The two of you have shared so many nuggets of wisdom tonight. Thank you so much. I learned so much on these calls. I can't imagine what the callers learn. Thank you, Julie Ford and Ryan Freilich, for being the incredible advisors that you are to your clients, the fabulous colleagues you are to your XYPN community members. And thank you for being such wonderful humans. Everyone have a great night. I'll see you back here next month.
Thanks, Maddie.
Misconceptions. Thanks, Julie. Bye, Ryan. Feel free to reach out to any of these advisors, and hopefully we'll see you guys at XYPN membership someday. Bye.
Good night.